The summer air of 70 CE hung thick with death over Jerusalem's ancient stones. Within the sacred walls, mothers clutched knives over their own infants, driven mad by starvation. Beyond the ramparts, Roman legionaries hammered nails through flesh at such a pace they literally exhausted the empire's supply of crucifixion wood. What began as a tax dispute had mutated into an apocalyptic confrontation that would reshape the ancient world and haunt civilization for 2 millennia. This wasn't merely another Roman conquest. This was the moment an empire renowned for calculated brutality would unleash devastation so complete that even battle-hardened centurions would wake screaming from nightmares decades later. The spark that ignited 4 years of carnage was almost mundane in its banality. In 66 CE, Roman procurator Gessius Florus, a man whose greed was legendary even by imperial standards, seized 17 talents of silver from Jerusalem's temple treasury. To the Jews, this wasn't taxation, it was sacrilege. The temple wasn't just their spiritual center, it was literally the dwelling place of their God. Jerusalem's streets erupted like a volcano, but this rebellion achieved something unthinkable. Jewish fighters ambushed and annihilated an entire Roman vexillation near Beth Horon, including elements of the Thawaitan Fulminata Legion. Legion standards, those golden eagles that symbolized Roman invincibility, lay trampled in Palestinian dust. For the first time in generations, provincial rebels had humiliated Rome's professional military machine. Emperor Nero's response was volcanic. He dispatched Vespasian, Rome's most lethal general with 3 full legions, nearly 60,000 elite soldiers, to restore imperial honor through blood and fire. Vespasian understood this wasn't conventional warfare against armies in neat formations. This was counterinsurgency against a population willing to die for their beliefs. His strategy was surgical and merciless. Systematically reduce every Jewish stronghold outside Jerusalem, transforming the Holy City into an isolated island of defiance surrounded by Roman-controlled territory. For 2 brutal years, Roman legions marched across Judea like death incarnate. Galilee fell amid massacres. Coastal cities surrendered or burned. Mountain fortresses were reduced to ash and memory. Each victory was punctuated by mass executions and enslavements, broadcasting Rome's message: this is what happens when you defy the eagles. By 68 CE, only Jerusalem remained, a beacon of desperate resistance crammed with refugees, zealots, and 3 rival Jewish factions who spent as much energy fighting each other as preparing for Rome's inevitable assault. Then history intervened. Nero's suicide plunged Rome into civil war, the chaotic year of 4 emperors. Vespasian was proclaimed emperor by his own legions, forcing him to abandon the Jewish campaign to secure his throne in Rome. Command fell to his 29-year-old son Titus, a general whose name would soon inspire terror across the Mediterranean. When Titus arrived at Jerusalem's gates in spring 70 CE, he commanded one of history's most formidable military forces. 4 complete legions, the V Macedonica, Ex Fretensis, 15th Apollinaris, and the rebuilt the Vetum Fulminata, hungry for revenge, plus auxiliary troops totaling nearly 70,000 professional killers. Jerusalem presented an almost impossible challenge. Built on steep hills, protected by massive walls constructed over centuries, and now housing perhaps 500,000 desperate souls within spaces designed for 80,000. The city had become a pressure cooker of humanity, religion, and desperation. Titus deployed his forces with textbook Roman precision, creating an iron ring around the city. The siege engines that followed were marvels of military engineering and instruments of systematic terror. 6-story tall catapults hurled 100-pound stones into crowded districts. battering rams protected by armored tortoise formations, pounded walls day and night until the very ground trembled. But here's where this siege transcended all others in Roman history. The enemy within was killing faster than the enemy without. As summer deepened, Jerusalem transformed into humanity's nightmare. Rival Jewish factions, led by John of Gischala, Simon bar Giora, and Eleazar ben Simon, engaged in vicious civil war while Romans tightened the noose. In their suicidal internecine battles, they burned each other's grain stores, destroying the very resources needed for survival. Famine stalked Jerusalem's streets like a living demon. Josephus, the Jewish historian who witnessed these horrors firsthand, recorded scenes that seem ripped from humanity's darkest mythology. People fought over scraps of leather, boiled and ate their shoes, swallowed their own hair. The wealthy hoarded crumbs while children starved in gutters choked with corpses. The most horrifying account involves Mary, daughter of Eleazar, a noblewoman driven to cook and consume her own infant son. When the aroma of roasting meat drew desperate neighbors, she offered to share her feast. The discovery of her meal's true nature sent shockwaves through the city that reached even Roman camps outside the walls. Josephus estimates over 100,000 people died from starvation and disease during the siege, more than would perish in the actual combat. Bodies accumulated faster than the living could remove them. The boundary between life and death blurred in streets where skeletal figures stepped over rotting corpses to search for anything edible. By late July, Titus had breached Jerusalem's outer defenses, but the Temple Mount remained impregnable, a massive fortified platform that was simultaneously fortress and sanctuary. This wasn't just military objective, it was the spiritual heart of Judaism, the dwelling place of the Jewish God. The final assault began on the 17th of Tammuz, a date forever etched in Jewish memory as catastrophe. Roman legionaries, their armor blackened by smoke and gore, fought through streets carpeted with corpses. Every building became a death trap, every rooftop a battleground where desperate defenders hurled stones and arrows at their conquerors. The temple itself became the siege's most horrific theater. As Roman torches ignited the outer courts, thousands of Jewish civilians, priests, pilgrims, refugees were trapped inside the sacred complex. Ancient sources describe screams that carried for miles as people burned alive in Judaism's holiest site. When Titus finally ordered the temple's complete destruction, even veteran Roman soldiers were reportedly moved to tears, not from sympathy, but from awe at witnessing the annihilation of one of the ancient world's architectural wonders. The great building collapsed in flames on the 9th of Ab, a date that remains a day of mourning in Jewish communities worldwide. When Jerusalem's agony finally ended in September 70 CE, the numbers defied comprehension. Josephus claims 1.1 million Jews died during the siege, likely exaggerated, but even conservative estimates exceed 600,000 dead, making this antiquity's deadliest urban siege. The methods of execution revealed Rome's capacity for industrial-scale brutality. Titus ordered mass crucifixions so extensive that, according to Josephus, there was no room for crosses nor crosses for the condemned. Prisoners were nailed to trees, walls, improvised wooden frames, anything that could support a dying body. The hills surrounding Jerusalem resembled a forest of agony stretching to the horizon. Nearly 100,000 survivors faced fates arguably worse than death. Sold into slavery across the empire, many were forced to fight as gladiators or fed to wild beasts in amphitheaters from Britain to Egypt. The temple's sacred vessels, including the golden menorah, were paraded through Rome in Titus's triumph, their images forever captured on the Arch of Titus that still stands today. The siege of Jerusalem accomplished Rome's immediate goal, ending organized Jewish resistance and scattering the Jewish people across the known world. But it also triggered consequences Rome never anticipated. The destruction of the Second Temple transformed Judaism from a location-based temple religion into something far more resilient, a portable faith that could survive without geography. This began the Jewish diaspora that would last nearly 1,900 years. More immediately, the siege established precedents for Roman brutality that would be invoked whenever the empire faced serious rebellion. The message echoed across provinces. This is what happens when you defy Rome. Perhaps most chillingly, the siege previewed humanity's capacity for organized annihilation. The systematic starvation, industrial-scale executions, deliberate targeting of civilian populations, these tactics would resurface throughout history whenever empires decided total victory required total destruction. Titus returned to Rome as a conquering hero, but ancient sources suggest private torment. When he became emperor 9 years later, his reign showed unusual clemency, as if he were trying to atone for Jerusalem's ghosts. Some victories, history whispers, exact prices that echo through eternity. The siege of Jerusalem stands as Rome's bloodiest triumph and history's reminder that certain conquests plant seeds of hatred that outlast empires themselves, shaping conflicts that continue devastating our world today.